Hello and welcome. We'll just wait a couple of moments whilst people come in from the waiting room. We are at our third instalment of our 4 annual programme events for the community volunteers. So welcome to everybody who's been able to make it. My name is John and I head up the community team at BCS. This afternoon I'll be your host for Q&A, and I'll also be talking to you a little bit about a new initiative called Regional Hubs, but more on that later. With us this afternoon, I'm delighted that we were able to be joined by Vice President Community Alistair Revell, our Managing Director of Institute Holly Porter, and Chris Banks, Chair of the Community Support Committee. Welcome all. This session is very much focused on providing you with the key updates and information to support you on your committee volunteering journey. And so there's going to be lots and lots of information. Hopefully you'll be able to kind of take note of that and be able to kind of share that with your wider committees, take it back to your branches, your specialist groups, your members, and be able to share some of the really good stuff taking place across the Institute. This evening will be a slightly different focus, so we'll be more emphasis on collaboration, and we've got quite a few cool workshop activities planned and to get you thinking about the future of your groups and how Community Support Committee will be able to kind of help facilitate and give you guidance and development to kind of achieve some of those things. Now, just coming into the house rules, so just a reminder, I think everybody's done it so far, but if you could just make sure that you've got your mics during the presentations and switch off your cameras as well, just to ensure that we're not kind of taking up any bandwidth unnecessarily. Please feel free to use the chat facility. You'll be able to kind of speak, introduce yourself to other members of the community there. Please feel free to share things like LinkedIn profiles and so on if you want to connect afterwards. I'll be monitoring the chat and picking up any Q&A. And we'll be taking questions and answers at the end of this session after the presentations. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Alistair Revell, FBCS CITP. Vice President Community. Welcome, Alistair.
Thanks, John, and good lunchtime to you all. As John said, I'm Alistair Revell. I'm the Vice President for Community, and therefore I'm the Chair of Community Board and also consequently a trustee for the Institute. So welcome to this spring convention. These are important events, and I want to start actually by just thanking everyone who's been able to give up the time this lunchtime and ideally later on this evening to give your valuable time to BCS and in a volunteering capacity. There is absolutely, I don't think, any doubt that without your voluntary efforts, the BCS wouldn't be half the organisation that it actually is. It's your hard work which makes us move forwards. I want to use this opening session really just to give you a bit of an overview of community boards and its structure, mainly for newbies, but also perhaps as a bit of a refresher for those who are longer in the tooth, because nothing does actually stand still within the Institute. We do, I know, have a reputation for perhaps grinding on slowly, but in reality, quite a few things change between these conventions. So I just want to cover off some of those. And also, I want to highlight just a few recent developments before I hand back to John, who will then usher you through the rest of this lunchtime session. So the overview of community. Community Board has delegated authority from the trustees and is one of 3 strategic boards, the other 2 being Influence and Academy. Influence looks after our external posture essentially, and Academy basically everything to do with academia and the learned society. So Community Board has responsibility from trustees for all aspects of membership. That's not just individual membership, but also now includes organisational membership. And so it's across the piece, basically. It's also responsible for the community. Us today, our 120 member groups, branches, international sections, student chapters. Essentially, I think ultimately, if you analyse the minutiae of the terms of reference, actually any time a member of BCS is engaged with another IT professional underneath a BCS umbrella, essentially would be part of the community. And we're also responsible for organisation and employer engagement. So quite a lot of responsibility. I want to just recap the reporting bodies that feed into Community Board, because I think that gives some detail about how we actually operate and what the moving parts are. And it's very easy for volunteers to hear all these names and not perhaps fully understand where they actually fit together. So just going through this does help, I think. So the key committee from your perspective is Community Support Committee, often called now CSC, which is led by Chris Banks, who's going to be doing a lot today. There's also the Finance Committee, which has been working extremely hard on the budget recently. That's led by Ram Kunani. Do give them some thought. I think it's the toughest gig within community, looking after the budget for all 120 groups. It's not an easy job. And we are in, unfortunately, a cost of living crisis. So we're all tightening belts at all sorts of levels, whether that be personal, in our business, or in our volunteer world here in BCS. There's also the new Fellowship Committee, which is chaired by Sonia Patel. Sonia is the System CIO at NHS England. It's an important new committee which is looking at making sure that we make the right people fellows. You know from some of the work that Holly presented that we've changed the way that membership grading now works, splitting essentially the membership grades from registrations, which are more about competence. Sonia's team, the Fellowship Committee, is about making sure we're making the right people fellows and making sure the standards are being applied. And also it's charged by Community Board to start establishing the idea of the collegiateness for fellows. And we're looking ideally to empower and enable fellows to do more in making IT good for society. So there are some exciting things that we expect to come out of that new committee as things roll on during this year and into next year. There's also the Fellows Technical Advisory Group, commonly called FTAG, which I suspect a lot of you will have seen because it has quite a high profile within the Institute. It's a hand-picked select group of fellows, making sure that we've got good inclusion and diversity, which is so important, which is basically charged with producing thought leadership pieces, which it has been doing now for some considerable, well, not considerable time, but well over a year, I think. It was originally established by Rashik Palmer, who was in a voluntary capacity, and some of you may know that Rashik actually has become our Chief Executive Officer and switched from being a volunteer to the staff side, leaving a vacancy. So I'm pleased to say that Adam Leon Smith, who you may have seen, has stepped up to chair that. But I'm going to say a bit more about FTAG a bit later on. So moving on to some of the other bodies, we've got the Health and Care Executive, which is chaired by Philip Scott, which basically provides an umbrella over the health and care and informatic groups which are within the community and provides a focus for them and does a lot of work around sort of publishing journals and running conferences and other bits and pieces and promoting the Fed IP registration, which is a peculiarity within that particular space. And then we've got the Early Career Executive, which is obviously there to promote people at the start of their career in our profession, which is led by John Dyer and ably supported by Jag Sohal and Tim Clark, who are making good strides in that area. So that is Community Board. It's a big beast and we cover a lot of activity. We're currently at the moment in a strategy planning phase, and we're trying to sort of understand how all these new bits fit together and to make them work around the 4 pillars, which I was imploring you at the beginning of the community year yourselves to actually look at and make sure that you're thinking about how you're progressing. So as a bit of a recap, remember that we've got membership, which basically forms the central pillar that may even be seen to be the roof on the Greek temple. That is the thing that we must get right, growing and sustaining our membership. That is the #1 goal, but it is supported by influence, progression, and inspiration. And they form quite a symbiotic relationship, as I've mentioned before. So it's very clear that the more members you have, the more influence you have. The more members you have, the better progression we can offer people in our profession from the beginning of their careers towards the end. And the more members we have, the more inspiring I think we will be. And obviously, the more influence we have, the more members we will attract, and the more progression we offer individuals in the IT profession, the more our membership will grow. And the more inspiration we're able to provide, the more our membership will grow. So it's really important that we work hard on these 4 pillars. I mentioned that I'd come back to FTAG and that Adam Leon Smith is now chairing that. We've also been able to appoint Christine Ashton, who some of you may know, used to be, I think, chair of Cheshire in quite a while ago, to lead. They have a a new role which has been handed to them after we reviewed a paper a couple of board meetings ago. Those of you who are long in the tooth and pre-pandemic days will remember that we had started looking at how to leverage expertise out of the community into the wider profession. And I'm pleased to say that we've now managed to make quite a bit of headway on this. Basically, FTAG is going to assume a new role, which I will mention. Basically, the process is that any group, whether that's a specialist group or a member group, or maybe even an individual who has a particular idea, should make contact with the policy team, that's James Woodward and his First Lieutenant Daniel Aldridge, to get some early support about what is possible and get some encouragement and support in getting what the necessary hurdles out of the way, basically. So Influence Board sets specific priorities for the Institute and what we want to focus on in terms of our external influence. Money is tight, there's cost of living crisis. We need to focus, James and his team, on key areas. So any article or any paper or any idea that is bubbling in the specialist group or any member group of any description, you should try, if you think you want to take it beyond the realms of your group, then you should really start talking to James at the earliest opportunity. And the best way to do that is to reach out, as always, to your community coordinator who can put you in touch if you don't already have a direct road to James and Daniel. So the next stage is it's important that any proposition that you're putting forward that has support of more than just the group that's around you. So ideally, you should be reaching out to specialist groups in and around your neck of the specialist world or wherever it is to get more support. And as you garner more support, and I think James and his team would help you do that, putting you in touch with the right people. Ultimately, James will actually refer the piece, whatever it is, in whatever shape and format or media it ends up being, will actually refer it to FTAG for review. So they're going to provide a peer review process to make sure that we've got the best out of the article. And outputs and outcomes could be just an opinion piece initially, perhaps in IT Now or on the web to try and garner more support. It could be a much more formal supporting, particularly if it's close to those things that Influence Board have identified as key topics for us at the moment. They will evolve, I think, over time, but they will be fairly stable. So that's really quite exciting. That's beginning to happen, and I know that James and his team has been reaching out over the last few months to chairs of specialist groups. I think that will be a continuous process. You may well have already been apprised of this process. You may well have seen some paperwork coming out, but there will be more, I'm sure. So that's quite exciting, I think, and I think is important. I also want to, before I sort of yield back to John, I want to actually just touch on some other really important things. I'm quite passionate about the idea of the community awards that we have. I think it's really important that we recognise the efforts that many of our volunteers actually put in over the years. And we have three levels essentially of important award. The first level is appreciation, the certificate of appreciation, which is basically awarded and available to anyone that basically has taken a role and done slightly more than you would have expected of it, have gone over and beyond basically in one specific area. It might be that they were the secretary of a group, it might be that they were a committee member, but they've done something slightly extra that has really impressed their colleagues. And again, the route for a chair or vice chair or the committee to actually bring this to attention of the board is via your community coordinator once again. If that person has actually been involved in more than one area, so they might be, for instance, working with a committee, and they might also be working as a chartered assessor, and in both cases would have warranted a certificate of appreciation in each of those areas, then actually we make a higher award, a meritorious award, which recognises work in more than one area. And again, that's a certificate which is normally presented at various events. At the top of the pile, and the most prestigious that we award within community is the John Ivinson Award, which you've got pictures here of in front of you. It was established in 2009 and named after a previous president, John Ivinson, who was president between 2002 and 3. It basically is there for the stellar work, basically significantly furthering BCS's strategic aims and directly contributing to our achievements, and for a sustained period, I think. So basically, outstanding service. And these are tended to have been awarded in recent times at what has become known as the Night of Two Presidents, basically a posh name for the evening of the AGM when we've got the outgoing president in the room and the incoming president in the room. So two presidents essentially have been in the last couple of years making these presentations. And you've got here the last or the most recent crop. So you've got Rob Neal, 2023. Rob had 21 years plus of volunteering behind him, working on multiple committees, boards and projects in that time, really driving through the quality of the degree or accredited degree program within Academy, and also embedding BCS and Engineering Council registrations within the university context and making much more of them. So it doesn't need to be just work within community, it can be work within Academy or any other part of the Institute. Then we've got Carol Long there in the middle. You can see the medal. It is actually a real piece of hardware. This is not something trivial. It is quite significant. Carol has put in, again, around 20 years of volunteering. She was vice chair of council for a while. She's chaired a number of member groups and has worked very closely with a number of member group committees over that period, and has also worked with the Risk Audit and Finance Committee, keeping the Institute as a whole on the straight and narrow and making sure that everything is ticking in the right direction. But perhaps significantly, she has also championed inclusivity wherever she's gone within her Institute work. And then on the right-hand side, we've got a picture of David Murray. David really caps it all, really. Staggering 35 years of voluntary work, promoting BCS in Scotland in all sorts of different capacities, and forever making sure that the Institute doesn't forget the unique geographical, political and jurisdictional differences that Scotland has within the United Kingdom. So you're looking there in those three images, if I do my maths correctly, so that's what, 75 years or more voluntary experience being given to the Institute. So I'm sure you will all join me in congratulating them. They were awarded it at the recent AGM in the evening and deserve our profound thanks, I think. So I come to an end, so I'm going to hand back to John to lead you into the next few bits, which are going to be exciting. And don't forget that we've also got a very interactive session this evening, which I know the team has been working very hard on. So John, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alistair.
No problem.
Really appreciate that update. Just a reminder, the process around policy and FTAG is available on the Volunteer Hub and also within our online community, if you'd like to find out a bit more. Really great to recognise and celebrate some of the recent achievements. So thank you for taking time to do that, Alistair. I'm sure it's much appreciated. Okay, so we've now got our next guest, Holly Porter, Managing Director of BCS Institute.
So really nice to talk to you all today. So my job really is just to give you a quick brief on how things are going with membership and also all things Institute, and also just some of the things that are happening. And I'm going to take the opportunity to talk a little bit more widely about what's happening across the whole of BCS, because I think everybody's exposed to lots of information, but we don't all manage to consume all of it. And certainly we're now using more and more channels to get the information out to you, so that's important. So if I just start by, see, Alistair and I have compared notes. We're both talking about the strategic focus of BCS to confirm that our strategy really does cover membership, inspiration, progression and influence, and those are not siloed things. They all work together. The sum of the parts is greater than the components. So certainly the membership strategy has got, for example, has got aspects of inspiration, progression and influence within it. So it all works really nicely together, just to set the scene. We have Rashik at the helm since October as our CEO, and he has created three parts of the group. So we have the learning and development business that we've always had, which provides commercial products and works through training providers and then increasingly direct to employers. And their role is to make a profit. We have the Institute, which is the bit that I'm Managing Director of the Institute now, which focuses around membership, around our proposition for employers, and also our member groups community and professional registrations. So I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. And we are here to be commercially sustainable. And then we have the third area of the group, which is education and public benefit, which is specifically calling out the work that Julia Adamson and her team are doing around supporting the pipeline into the profession and also influencing the quality of our education from primary schools right the way through to HE and FE, and also looking at the Learned Society. And this is part of the businesses our charitable arm, and I'll be talking about the new BCS Foundation that has just launched a little bit later on as well. So just to give you a feel for how the bits of the group fit together as a starting point. So if I start by talking about membership, we've got a really pleasing graph here, and these are a bit crude, but I've taken them directly from our business intelligence system. So we track the membership, and we look each month at the sort of net movement. And you know, if you remember, if you look back even just over a year ago, the picture was very, very different. We had a smaller community, it's about 60, just over 60,000, and we were struggling after the impact of the pandemic and wanting to connect with lots of different parts of the profession. And I'm pleased to say that this is going in the right direction, very much so. We've made significant progress after a focus on the early career part of the profession to make sure we connect the BCS relationship in to all the routes into the profession, not just universities as it was traditionally, but thinking about things like apprenticeships and accelerated learning boot camps. And all of that's really important to get the awareness around what the support the professional body can give at that crucial stage, and then hopefully people will stay with us throughout their journey. We've got growth at the moment across all of the grades, which is really positive. The exception is around our chartered proposition, the CITP in particular, and again I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. But we're now at nearly 69,000, and actually the target that we set for the end of the following financial year was 70,000. So we're in danger of actually hitting that in this financial year. So from a volume perspective, that's really, really pleasing and something that we want to continue to nurture. Just to mention also that I've been really keen to make sure that we don't give memberships away for free. I'm a firm believer that if you give membership away for free, people don't value it, and we've got plenty of evidence of that over the years. We're gradually chipping away at that, so we've only got a couple of formats now linked, for example, with our professional certifications, which is free for a year, but other than that, largely people are paying sort of full whack, and there are some discounted volumes in that delta between the full membership number as well. So not all of those not all of the remainder are free, some have just got a slight discount. So, you know, again, that full paying membership has grown 10% year on year, so a pleasing trend. We also look at the lapses and the new versus the new to make sure that there's a healthy balance, and we can spot any trends and focus on retention as well as on growing new members in. And so we've got a sort of tracker around what's the average number of members per month that we're getting, and are we above or below that, and the average lapses. We've got a couple of months where traditionally I think a lot of the subscriptions started in May. So we've got a really big renewal month in May and then also in June. So that's coming up soon. But you'll see that the number of new members is really pleasing. We've got a target, a KPI around that of 18,000 for the year. And at the 7-month point, we're well ahead of that. So hopefully that will also continue to bring new people into the community. And then linked to this is the retention story. And this is the overall retention figure across all of the grades. So the retention, for example, for people who have done an accelerated bootcamp course is going to be much, much lower than somebody who's got chartered registration with BCS. So you've got sort of aggregate in there, but we're tracking at 72%. So we're just slightly below the KPI of 73%. But in a cost of living crisis and a recovery mode from the pandemic, I'm reasonably pleased with that. You can see that the line is pretty stable. The ends of the graph are people who are still within their renewal window. So you have, when your membership renews, you have 4 months to confirm that you're renewing. So we haven't got to the end of that window yet for the latter part of the graph, just to explain that to you. On revenue, I'm conscious I haven't really shared the revenue picture with you before. This is just purely around the membership. So we look at individual membership and organisational membership, and how we're tracking against the budget. We've got a really, really aggressive budget this year, actually, for organisations. I think what had happened is we'd had really, really strong growth over the previous sort of 18 months or so, and we've got quite bullish and put in a really sort of aggressive target for our organisational membership. I'm not convinced we're going to hit that, being quite honest, by the end of the year, but we're still going to be over what we were the previous year. So the story is still really positive, and obviously as a team we're keeping a close eye on this as it goes through. And actually, the individual membership is performing pretty well, and if you consider that we've got an earlier careers mix, who some of them are paying lower fee rates because they've come in at the early careers rate, to be just 2% behind isn't too bad really for individual membership. So overall we're tracking pretty well. I just wanted to give you a couple of headlines as well in terms of some of the things that the team are working on, you may be aware of and others not. We've got an offer for existing MBCS members around CITP. So this was extended from November onwards, just after we did the membership grade changes, so that anybody who's an MBCS can have the fee waived for CITP. We've had over 200 members come forward for that now, and some are still going through the assessment process. And while the interest is sort of starting to tail slightly, it's been a really positive uptake and something we want to continue to push. We don't have a measure, so every time I go to trustee boards I get asked about, well, what's the engagement measure, or the lifetime value, all of these things around how can we tell what people are doing once they're in membership, and we've got little bits of that puzzle but not the full picture. So again, that's something we're going to be hopefully bringing in very soon. But in the meantime, we've got strong indicators that people are participating in membership through by looking at certain benefits. For example, our soft skills platform, downloads of our onboarding pack, our welcome pack, participation in things like the CPD guide. So all of these the indicators are much higher than they were this time last year. So people are definitely participating. We have relaunched the PDP tool. So this is the personal development log, and it's really closely linked to CPD and the Sophia framework that you can also view. So it enables you to set up your personal development plan. And we're getting about 200 new accounts a month now set up since we relaunched this. And the idea being that we can signpost more and more people towards completing that personal development plan and tracking their CPD as we start to roll out the CPD offer. You've had a membership survey link come into your inboxes and you filled it out already, but if you haven't done so, then please do. And if you haven't seen it, then let us know and we can make sure that you get another copy of that. So that's live, and it's really important for us to understand your experiences and hear your views of how things are going. We've been holding CPD events, so working closely with our learning and development team, who are looking at sort of different topic areas. We have the last one was around data. So it was an immersive experience where it was a travel company, fictional travel company, who was thinking about going into space and what the considerations around data would be. And so it's a really participative experience. These are put together also working with members of our community. The last one in February had really strong attendance, and we're working on another one for early May, so watch this space. Also, our welcome webinars, just another indicator that people are interested in what we're doing. We're getting over 100 people at each of our welcome webinars, and that's a really nice way to enter BCS and find out about what we're doing. A few more developments. We've got payment by instalments. We've been wanting to do this for quite a while. Sometimes we get feedback that, to pay, certainly when you're paying full MBCS grade or FBCS, to pay all of that in one go. Not everybody feels hugely happy about that, and so we've now trustees have just signed off the ability to pay by instalment. So we'll be bringing that in over the next few months as in line with people's renewals, and also opening it up to new members hopefully in the next couple of months, and that will enable people to spread 12 equal payments across the year. So making the subscription just a bit more affordable. And this will be open to anybody who's paying over £92 in their membership fee. So it's not going to be there for students because they wouldn't need it. They're paying £20 at the moment, but for those on full MBCS and FBCS, that could be quite helpful. We've also got a CPD content hub in development. So Alistair was talking about all of the great content that you're producing and that we want you to continue to produce. We're going to have a great home for a lot of this, and we're also going to have more guidelines around the different formats that we want that to be produced in, so that it can be more readily shareable with a wider group. It's not going to replace what we're doing on YouTube necessarily. It's just going to create content in a more digestible format for a broader range of our members. And this is a member-only benefit. We will also be putting video content in there, practical content tagged to the Sphere framework and different skill areas, really to provide more for people, regardless of what area of the profession they're in or what career stage. So that will be delivered in August. I'm going to talk on the next slide about professional registrations, because that's a really, really vital part of the BCS mix in terms of professional credibility and credentialing, and really showing that you're a trusted professional and you're competent in your role. So we're trying to encourage more of our members to join the professional registers, and we've got quite a choice available to us now. And just something quite quick and easy that the marketing team has developed is a registrations quiz that's going to sit on our website and also be shared out via different channels, so that you can assess which one of our options may be right for you. And then we have a refresh of CITP in planning as well. So we looked at the membership grades last year. CITP, we haven't looked at that as a standard and, as in terms of its relevance to the market for quite some time. So we plan to do that because we really want to grow out our base of competent, ethical, accountable and inclusive IT professionals. And that's a prime way of demonstrating that. So the professional registrations picture, quite a lot on this slide, but we've got the Sphere framework that sits at the heart of it so that you can see what level you're operating at. We've got our professional certifications offered by our L&D business at different levels, so those map to the Sphere levels. And then we've got a portfolio of registrations. So in the bottom block, you've got RIT Tech and CITP, and it shows where they sit. We've got the FedIP registrations, which are for the health and care profession, and we've got the Engineering Council registrations that we license in the different levels. So we've got all of those that we're offering to market. And then new to the portfolio are the Emerging Data Science Alliance registration. So we've got Data Science Professional and Advanced Data Science Professional. So those are really, really new. We've just been through a pilot phase with them, but those who are working in data science or analyst roles or engineer roles, that will be open to them as an option alongside everything else. So if I'm going to talk a little bit more now about some of the other things that have been happening. Firstly, looking at our events and engagement. So this is a constant theme, it's actually what you do as the community. You're doing events all the time. So this isn't supposed to be a representation of everything that's going on. But just last week, John was at the BCS Women Lovelace Colloquium, and that's an event for computer science students that came out of BCS Women. Really, really strong reputation now, fantastic levels of employer sponsors as well. Really amazing sort of speeches and inspiring dialogue throughout the day, and also a poster competition for students. We've had lots of examples on social media of the participants in that who've been sharing their posters. So that's really pleasing to see. Olivia and I supported the Hack Bath, University of Bath BCS student chapter event a couple of weekends ago. So we didn't stay for the 24 hours because we're not made of strong enough stuff, but it was really fantastic to have a presence there, and also to see the BCS student chapter doing such fantastic work, and also bringing in local employers in that as well. The Health and Care BCS team has been at HET Show North. That's Adam Thilthorpe, who is hosting a panel there. So really sort of cementing our footprint and growing reputation that we have in the health and care area. And then we've already mentioned the handover of the presidents and the event that we held after the AGM. So all of this provides great content for us to share on what we're doing on social media and hopefully be much more visible and accessible to a wider range of our members and also our non-members. So in terms of, we'll all have heard an awful lot about AI at the moment. So it's the hot topic, and our policy team is working really, really hard around having a strong presence in that. And so we have contributed and worked really closely with DSIT, with the new government department, around the publication of the white paper. And Rashik was actually quoted in the press release. And actually tomorrow, Adam Leon-Smith from FTAG is representing BCS and giving evidence at the All Parliamentary Group's white paper roundtable. So that's great to see one of our volunteer community contributing to the policy agenda so strongly. And so this is going to be a theme for FTAG. It's going to be a theme much more broadly. We're commenting on the AI pause recently advocated by several of the large tech companies. So we really want to have a strong voice in this, but we also want to think about how we play in any potential regulation or that comes out of it, or registration or assurance. So it's a very quick, fast evolving landscape at the moment, and something that we want to stay very close to. And I think we're doing quite a good job of that so far as a policy team. We've also, the Computer Misuse Act has got a consultation out at the moment, and we're working collaboratively as part of the Cybersecurity Alliance that we're involved with. So a couple of the members of that, including the Worshipful Company, we're going to be looking at sort of responding to some of these issues around cyber. And then we have our monthly policy jams. Hopefully you are involved. You've seen some of those firsthand. Last week's was around TikTok. So keep those are I think the second Wednesday of every month. So always worth listening into those and an opportunity to contribute directly to. So in terms of the brand, the IT board you'll probably be aware of. So the cycle always seems to get longer and longer, but those are now open for entry for the 2023 awards. And this is something that we do jointly with Computing Magazine, and we provide all the judging expertise and have lots of members of our community who are involved in that process. But we want to encourage our members to enter either individually or as organisations too. So we've opened that, and we're hoping to do a webinar to explain a little bit more about that process and the categories shortly. We've seen really, really good engagement around social media. I'll probably mention it several times, but things like announcing our new president and deputy president got really, really strong traction. And we've got an increase in our subscriber base across our platforms. So we have Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram now, Instagram being the newest. We're looking at TikTok, but we haven't quite decided with everything going on whether we're going to go there or not. But it's important for us to have a broad footprint across the different platforms, because different platforms appeal to different members within our community. And then just another thing in terms of branding, sort of something quick and easy that we did that have proved hugely popular. We've got BCS laptop stickers now, and they enable us to celebrate different policy areas, also things like inclusion. It's something that's we're really passionate about, and also just to celebrate being part of the community. So we've got those available now. So I'm sure they'll be coming to an event near you soon. In terms of our learning and development business, there's lots happening there, but just a couple of the new things. We have a new focus around technical accreditation. So we've got a really established degree accreditation programme that's linked with CITP. We've created a couple of standards that enable us to work with training providers and accredit the quality of learning. So these aren't accredited to any registrations per se, but it's about training programs and saying that they're of a good quality and they meet strong learning outcomes and have all of the right ingredients, and it's something that BCS would support. So it's been really early pilot stage. There are two versions of it, one mainly for training providers and others for employer schemes. And so far, Microsoft have really kind of embraced this, and we've accredited 8 of their fundamentals courses and a couple of boot camps as well. And we're also working with TSB on their internal employee program around essential digital skills. So quite often these courses are aimed at sort of entry level or early careers, or they're sort of short, sharp pieces of learning. So it's nice to have another opportunity to put the BCS badge onto and get recognition more broadly out in the market through these other courses. So that's hot off the press and something that you'll be seeing more of in the months to come. And then we've also got, I think Chris actually, who's going to talk later, has been involved in the development of this as an expert, but we've got a new foundation certificate in architecture, concepts and domains. And so this is a professional certification that is offered out through training providers. We've promoted this directly to our employer base. So we've had a really good response in terms of leads. And actually, I think probably a quarter of those leads have come from our member community, which is great. So clearly a hot topic around architecture and an opportunity to provide a really broad base of subject knowledge through this certificate. So on any of these things, I'm happy to share more information out afterwards, or I can answer questions as best as I'm able to later. In terms of our digital skills focus, we're now on our 4th Digital Skills Network event. So this is an event that was led by our learning development team. And this is to bring together a broad base of stakeholders, so employers, training providers, local government and tech for good organisations, employers, and talk all around the digital skills agenda in a specific region. So we were in Scotland relatively recently. The next one is on the 21st of June in Reading. And it's a really nice opportunity to meet other members and non-members of BCS, and also to have your say around the digital skills agenda. And then BCS produces thought leadership reports that gives us a sort of local lens on the skills environment. So we'll be releasing that too. And this one, you know, again, we've got AI, as you'd expect, on the agenda, but also looking at things like the future of the apprenticeship levy and how we end the digital divide. And Freddie Queck is going to be one of the speakers at that as well. And the IT and Digital Apprenticeships Award, now in its 2nd year. You can see Jag Sohal on the right-hand side in that photo next to me. So Jag was the speaker at those first events, and really about, as you know, as our early careers exec advocate, she was kind of talking to the finalists at the awards and really sort of helping to inspire them and celebrate the achievements that they've made. And it was a really lovely event. This is the 2nd one. We've had a really good response. The judging is happening next week, and that's on the 15th of June. So just another sort of beacon event in the BCS calendar. So it's nice to see that. In terms of our education and public benefits area, there's a lot happening here as well. We've been on a path to look at all of the awards and prizes that BCS has, and to make sure that we've got a really nice spread, recognising different achievements. So we've got 3 new prizes in the education area, the academic area. So the Lovelace Medal for Computing, we've split that into 2 categories, one around research and one around education, and also the Roger Needham Award. So all of those 3 are open for nominations at the moment, and the deadline is the 10th of May. So hopefully you'll see that on LinkedIn, but if you could spread the word, or if you know anybody who could be in frame for those, that would be brilliant. And then the Education Public Benefit team has also launched the BCS Foundation. So this is it's been approved by the Charities Commission. It's a charitable incorporated organisation that sits within the BCS group, and that enables us to create charitable programmes that support making IT good for society. The first example of that is My Digital Future. So we worked really closely on pilots of that programme with the Embrace group and also with South Wales. And this is to provide direct support for disadvantaged people who want to come into the tech industry in the form of things like mentoring and coaching, also bursaries and money for equipment to help them to go and study. And so we're already supporting some young people through that, and that's something that we want to increase over the years to come. And so we've set up the foundation so we can look at multiple opportunities just to make IT good for society, but My Digital Future is the first example of that. So I think, I can't do it justice talking to you today. I think it would be great to hear more about that. And so I was talking to the team about, perhaps if we could do a more detailed session to everybody who wants to find out more of that, because you can get involved individually or as a branch, or you can refer people. So lots of ways to contribute to that really important initiative. And then finally, I just wanted to end on saying that I'm so encouraged to see more and more people talking about their involvement with BCS out in the public. And, that's absolutely essential to the relevance of our community, its position in the overall market, the importance of the professionalism agenda. And also it's a great opportunity for us to celebrate the people that are in our membership community as well. So, if you things like sharing the chartered IT, that was somebody who'd been through our fast track offer at the moment, who's just shared that. We've got somebody who did the ethics module, the CPD module, and all of these are being shared regularly in fellowship as well. So it's really pleasing to see more and more of that, and we absolutely welcome that if you feel so inclined. But we're conscious also that we want to support you as volunteers and to help us to tell the story. And so we're sort of thinking about some materials that might help you to do that. I've talked a lot about early careers and helping people to get into tech. We've all got early careers advocates as part of the groups and want to make our programs more relevant. So we've got some materials now. We've got an area of the website called Getting Into Tech, which is all around careers inspiration, with some really nice videos and a little bit of demystification about what tech is. And so it's a lovely place to signpost people to. And so we've got a couple of postcards with the links to those pages for volunteers or for you to give to people that who might be interested in joining us. So just the start of hopefully a lot more of that type of thing to come. But I will finish now, because I think that's been a lot of information for you to digest. But the headline for me really is, I'm really keen for you to know more about what we're doing, and I'm really keen for you to, for it to be a dialogue as well, for you to tell us what you need, and the more that you talk about us, the more it helps the community be much broader and richer and more diverse. So we're really grateful for everything that you're doing on that. So thank you very much. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Holly. That was a really broad look at all the activities taking place across the organisation. We just had one quick question, actually, you might be able to help with. Temi's just asked about, I think it was the Roger Needham and the Lovelace Awards and medals. Are they international or are they UK, or would you need phone a friend to help?
I probably would need to phone a friend on those two. So let me do that. I can do some quick research and put it in the chat shortly. How about that?
That's super. Thank you, Holly. So we'll get back to you on that later in the session, Temi. Yeah, amazing stuff, really. I was at Lovelace, say last week. Absolutely phenomenal effort from Hannah D and the team of BCS Women. And the way that they're able to run the event, I think they had something like £35,000 of corporate sponsorship, which was then able to kind of bring students from across the UK to be able to present their papers, and it removed all of the barriers that you would typically worry about for trying to make it an inclusive event. And yeah, it was phenomenal, really, really great event. And it's been nice to get out and about in Glasgow recently, meeting the Edinburgh branches and BCS in Scotland, and celebrating ISSG's 40th anniversary. Last week, I think. I'm losing track. It's been a busy month. But thank you for highlighting some of those stories, Holly. We're recording this session, so we'll be able to kind of share some. You'll be able to look back on some of those things. And if you've got any questions at all which pop up afterwards, remember your coordinator, so Kerry, Mandy, or Marie will be able to kind of help link you to those various initiatives. Great. So thank you very much, Holly. We'll now move on to Chris Banks, FBCS CITP and chair of our Community Support Committee. Chris, over to you.
So it got me thinking at the beginning. John mentioned this is the third community event of this year. And I suppose just reflecting very briefly for CSC, the first event was the kickoff, introducing CSC. The last one was around establishing CSC and some of the lessons that we learned. And what I'd like to do is just take you through a bit of a recap on some of the key areas for some of you that may have missed some of the earlier events, but also some of the updates, and to let you know what we've been doing as well. So for those that don't know me, so I've been a member of the BCS for just over 10 years. I think the first half of that was really around learning, discovering what the BCS had to offer, going to events, becoming a mentor, and then the last 5 years been on the Enterprise Architecture Specialist Group Committee, and now the Community Support Committee. So it's sort of been a journey of growth and discovery, I would say, that's sort of taken me to this point. And in my day job, lead enterprise architect for Magic Circle Law Firm. So contents mentioned around recap, and then 4 E's that I'd like to cover: establish, engage, enable, evolve, as we go through. So just starting with a bit of a recap. So when we think about CSC, there's 4 key aims. And about a year ago, when I started talking with John, with Alistair, some of the things, the aims are quite evident, right? It's about sort of bridging some of the gaps between the member group, that's the volunteers, BCS HQ, gathering goodness and surfacing it at scale. But why? And there's been some reflection points thinking about individuals, communities, organisations. The needs are always evolving, especially what we see now in a post-pandemic world. Some of the demands that people have, or some of the ways that people now strike a work-life balance has changed. So whether that's being at home to do school runs, working different days during the week, we're not sort of seeing the things that we saw a few years ago, where people would go maybe to central London for events, a lot more hybrid, remote. And so some of the things that CSC are really focusing on is trying to understand sort of the good things that have been happening across the member groups, thinking about surfacing it at scale, but also really focusing in on some of the rules, processes, procedures, and thinking about how to be able to communicate those messages from the community board, but also to be able to engage with the broader community. Because when we look at the member group rules, like many things, they've been around for some time. They need to evolve. They need to stay relevant. But what we now see is that those rules are about 5 years old. And so now, in a very different world, we need to think about how we can evolve and how we can identify where changes are required to present recommendations. And then I suppose the last point that we have here is thinking about the life cycle there are of member groups. There could be new ones that come along, and there have been over the last few years. There could be some changes, or there could be reasons that groups might no longer exist, for what reasons still beg to be seen. But ultimately, 4 areas are aims of the CSC. So Alistair mentioned earlier on about the beast of community board. So quite a few committees and executives that are reporting into the community board, and as do community support committee. So working really closely with John and the community team at BCS, community support committee is really here to sort of help join some of those dots, bridge gaps, and really create a way that I suppose that can surface sort of member group voice, feeding into the community board as we go forwards on a regular basis. So we did start with a plan, and I think the one thing that we found was there's various things that happen in life, and we saw a little bit of slippage with the plan before Christmas. So you can see some of the dates changed, and where we've got to, delighted to see that we now got to the point where it looks like we're starting to go downhill with the end of year convention not far away from us now. But there is one area that I will come on to, and that's around the appointment of Community Support Committee, which is something that is ongoing. Which leads me on to establishing CSC. So one of the things that became really apparent at the beginning, which was we needed to identify areas to prioritise, which roles we needed to address. And what we soon found was the importance of putting people at the heart of what we were doing, and the needs that there were for specialist groups, for branches, and also starting to think about the volunteers development and some of the things that people that have kindly volunteering their time to different member groups where they might need some support or some additional help or understanding some of the ways of doing things. I know through my experience as a volunteer that trying to find information sometimes has been the hardest thing to do, or understand if we're doing events within a committee, what tools to use when and for what, right? There's lots of questions that came up. So what we've really focused on were the roles that you can see in green that we've appointed, and I'll come on to introduce our committee in a moment, and that there's still a couple of roles that we are looking to fill. And these are really important ones around communications, being able to ensure that we've got the right people in the right roles. So not only just to communicate the messages that are coming through from community board, but also to share best practice around communication within member groups and how to create sort of far reach communication using different channels. We heard Holly talking earlier on about social media platforms, and different people prefer different tools for different things. And these are some of the things that we need to think about. So if anyone's interested, there will be a link that you'll be able to register interest on around the community communications officer role. But the one that I'm really excited about is the Community Support Committee role. So at the beginning, this was never a role that was meant to exist on CSC, and I reflected for a period of time when there was interest that was being registered, and some of the interest, it was quite overwhelming what was coming through from different people, different demographics, different parts of the world even, and really got me thinking about some of the barriers to entry, or some of the challenges even that we see within some of the committees and member groups today, which is the sustainability of member groups. So this is where we decided with Alistair and John's support that we'd introduce this role, which is effectively a co-opted members role. It doesn't have voting rights, but really a way to make it more accessible for people to become part of the BCS governance, to start contributing towards the IT profession, helping others, but also working with officers within the committee that have got a bit more experience, creating a bit of a buddy system. So this is a role that we're looking to fill going forwards, and there's a few roles. And what the aim is really trying to think about succession planning, thinking about who might be the committee of the future, but also making sure that we can get that right balance of diversity and inclusion and different views and perspectives feeding into what we're doing. So it doesn't become a committee that's stuck in its ways or has a single view. There's lots of different lenses and contributions that are feeding into how the committee is working as it goes forwards. So I'm absolutely delighted, and I was earlier this year, to introduce the committee. So we have Kitty Young, so vast array of experience, PhD, chartered fellow. So Kitty's focusing on the member group committee roles. What we've had is some feedback, well, definitely over the last 6 months or so, myself directly, around roles like inclusion officer, that we need to make it easier for committees to understand what those roles are, what are the mandatory ones, what are some of the do's and don'ts. And so Kitty's going to be taking the lead on the member group committee roles. We have Saf, again, vast array of experience. I'd say Mr. Agile, if any of you know him, he eats, sleeps and breathes Agile. And Charles Fellow is focusing on a couple of areas. One, which is around volunteer development. So thinking about the reward and recognition and really helping volunteers, and also the conference and convention planning. So we have Saf to thank for his help and contributions, as well as others in the committee for the session that we've got coming up later tonight, which I think is going to be quite an exciting session. Then Sahir, who brings an absolute wealth of experience from all of the specialist groups that she's been a part of. So it just made sense and a really good fit for Sahir to pick up the reins as specialist group community officer. And then finally, the one person in the committee that hasn't had, I suppose, as much experience of BCS, but within their role, working within the NHS across the ICS or ICBs, Kieran Hoy. So he joins us focusing on branch community. So he's very keen of thinking about bringing together different people from different communities, being able to create pathways to drive outcomes. So far, this is our committee. We're working very closely with John, with Kerry and the broader team. We've had our kickoff earlier this year, and now we're starting to work through various initiatives. So if you are interested on joining the committee, there's a couple of roles. It's a safe QR code that you can see on the screen. So if you've got your phone in your hand and you'd like to scan and register interest, please feel free to do so. So moving from established to engage. Right at the beginning of establishing CSC, one of the areas that was important for me, which was ensuring that we had the right tools and the right platforms to connect, collaborate, and to be able to share information with people. And was absolutely delighted to see the tools that BCS have been providing for the members forum. So there's a growing community on there online, and lots of different groups giving members and volunteers the opportunity to come together to share on different topics of interest. In the middle, you can see CSC team. So recognizing sort of new ways of working, CSC has formed itself from the beginning as being a hybrid committee. So we haven't actually all met in person. So it's been virtual, it's been chats, it's been IMs, it's been video calls, it's been what works and what time people are able to offer when they can offer it. So in the background, I suppose, we're sort of paddling away like swans, kicking like crazy underwater and trying to drift along, but really using some of the tools that are being provided by the BCS to help make it happen. And then earlier this year, we heard about the Volunteer Hub that was launched. So just a bit of a recap for those that aren't familiar with the Volunteer Hub, great source of information to find out what good practice is out there to help volunteers and member groups in what they're doing. So they're the areas really for CSC as we're communicating with others is thinking about what we're going to be sharing going forwards on the Volunteer Hub. So point of reference and good practice, and for any collaboration on the members forum. So the first group that's been established on the members forum from the kickoff that we had with the specialist group chair and vice chairs in last month was the community leaders group. So what this was really born out of was some of the the leaders within the community coming together, talking about some of the topics that they'd really like to discuss as we go forwards together. So you can see that there's a list of 7 topics that have been identified as sort of future agenda items for meetings. So everything from finding speakers for events to working out how we can come together and do things, and thinking about best practice in different areas as well. So that's just from one event that we've done with some of the community leaders. So now we're looking to go from the in-person event to working more remotely, having quarterly events, and looking to grow that community leaders group using the member forum online. So there's now starting to be some topics that's starting to come up, and some collaboration that's starting to take place. So if you haven't started to use the members forum, really suggest it's a great tool. Communities are starting to come together and sort of thinking about different things that are important that we want to do going forwards. And talking going forwards, there's an action that we had that came from community board to understand sort of the pulse and the volunteer satisfaction, and some of the things that we can do going forward. So something that's going to be coming soon is going to be the volunteer satisfaction survey. I understand from John that there's another survey that's going to be coming out soon. So to avoid survey fatigue, we're going to be holding back just to make sure there's a bit of breathing space before that comes out. But this is going to be really important, and encourage any of you that are on the call to please give your feedback, because without your feedback, we don't know what's important and what we need to prioritise. And if you could please pass on that message to any others that you work with or collaborate with, volunteer with, within the community, would really appreciate it. So please keep your eyes out for the satisfaction survey for when it's coming. And it's been mentioned a couple of times. So spring convention, well, it's 2 halves at lunchtime in the evening. So this evening, there's going to be 3 facilitated group sessions. So we're going to have Sahir, we're going to have Saf and myself. They're going to be facilitating 3 of the groups. We've got a pretty good turnout already, but if you would like to come along to share some of your thoughts, some of your ideas, and some of the things that are important that we need to really understand more about, it would be great if you can join us. The format is going to be the breakout sessions, and then 3 questions that we're going to be looking to ask attendees. Then we'll be looking at how we can prioritize these and have a bit of a retrospective together, just so we can talk some of these through, just so we're starting to get some good feedback, thinking about some of the things that we can do to really widen the influence across the profession, and also find out what you'd like CSE to do for you, and if there's any learning development needs that would make your volunteering experience better as well. So they're the key things that we want to focus in on tonight, and look forward to you joining us if you're able to. So it was only 2 of the E's, not all of the E's, I wanted to share today, but just to give you a bit of insight into CSE's ways of working going forwards, which is, as we have as a committee together, we've established ourselves, we've started to engage and thinking about, with your support, how we can enable what we're going to do next. But I think, as I mentioned earlier on, now we see everyone's got different preferences and needs that are evolving. We expect that to keep evolving, and CSE, really what we want to focus on is thinking about how we're keeping communities, the profession, Chancellor Institute and the strategic pillars right at the core of what we're doing. So that's all from me. Not sure if there's any questions that have been coming up. I can see that there's numbers that have been typing up in the chat. John, back to you, I suppose.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. So the one question we did pick up, but it's been answered in chat already, was just around the community leaders group and who's that designed for. So that's designed for our chairs and our vice chairs. We also have an all community volunteer group as well, which Kerry's put in the chat as well. So those two have become available. And just to follow up on your point about the survey, so as Holly mentioned, current survey out at the moment is all member survey. Make sure that you've received it. If you haven't received it, let customer service know and we'll get it back out to you. Really important that we collect member views as part of that survey. Once we've got past that survey and we receive responses from that, then we'll move into the kind of volunteer survey as we get into May. So just a clarification there. So I'm just going to talk to you about a new initiative which we have been running and developing called Regional Hubs. What I wanted to do is just start off with a bit of a, I guess, a problem statement to help us kind of understand the rationale behind regional hubs. So the focus really was that we wanted to move away from silos which occur through BCS regional activity and to really start utilising the sum of our parts. So if we take a holistic view, BCS invests a lot of time and effort regionally. But unfortunately, over the years, it's kind of created a bit of a silo effect where BCS might be working with, it could be up to anything 10 plus stakeholders in a region. But each of these stakeholders isn't able to really utilise the benefit of wider BCS relationships in the region. And I know at previous conventions, members have kind of expressed they want to have greater engagement and work more closely with BCS corporate organisations. But there has been a lot of rationale and reason why we've worked that way. It's had a lot of good intentions. So account managers working very closely with our corporate customers, and that now equates to 25% of our overall membership. So that's been really successful, that dedicated, curated relationship. Similarly, those relationships that we have with universities through delivering accredited programs, been really focused on that degree accreditation, and likewise in computing at school. Really enormous success, very much focused on relationships between BCS and the teachers. But unfortunately, some of the focus that we've had in developing those programs has meant that we've only really presented a bit of a narrow view of what BCS is able to deliver within a region. And as head of community, it probably wouldn't surprise you that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about how we try and maximise our capability out in a region so that branches, organisations, universities are able to benefit from, say, the sum of our parts in that area. And also how we kind of move post-pandemic into a world where we can start revitalising our regional work and revitalising our branches in particular. So I know a lot of our branches have struggled to kind of put together programs and run committees when they were unable to meet during the pandemic. And so what I want to do is think about an approach which will help to revitalise some of our regional networks. And so regional hubs really are about joining the dots between BCS stakeholders across a region to achieve our Royal Charter, right? So it's about creating an ethical and competent profession, as well as making IT good for society. So practically, and not to go too grandiose with this, the hubs really allow us to connect and provide a forum for local branches, local BCS employers, so those who have corporate organisation membership schemes with BCS, educators, so our universities who we accredit their degrees, training providers, computing at school, and wider members with an environment to learn about each other's needs and to help each other solve challenges, which overall will help to improve the local digital profession and hopefully digital society. It's a forum which connects the various stakeholders in a region. That's the aims of the Regional Hub initiative. And so to kind of keep us honest with the development of this initiative, we developed some initial top line objectives, and we'll be working through some of the KPIs as we start going into deployment with this program. But a big part of the approach is wanting to evolve models of engagement and better enable better relationships at a regional stakeholder level. And we want to be able to grow our influence and have a presence across these regions. So there's a lot of devolved powers now taking place in regional assemblies, or if you're looking across the UK, Parliament in Scotland, obviously Northern Ireland, and the Senate in Wales. And we want to be able to work and influence these this public sector, and be able to work with those private organisations and third sector organisations to collectively address the issues around professionalism, or even address social economic issues using programmes like our My Digital Future bursary. So ultimately, what we want to be able to do is to service our customers and members better by allowing them to benefit from all the relationships that we have in a region, rather than, as I started off with, that kind of narrow perspective, that narrow channel of, the primary reason why they might be engaging with BCS, so they benefit from all the other offerings that we have as an organisation. And so by joining the dots, ensuring that we're better utilising the knowledge of local employers, educators to help with curation of content, activities, be able to help branches with resources that our employers will have. So initial conversations I've had have been around being able to provide venue space, being able to provide volunteers to help with committees, and in some instances being able to support with things like catering events. We also hope that the new regional structure will better support public benefit work. And we really want to be able to utilise local funding from local authorities, employers and academic institutions to increase digital skills and create the competent and professional workforce. So we've got a couple of models of hub and development at the moment. The first one being probably the easiest to some extent, so the join the dots model, and that's really focused on areas where BCS already has a large presence. And so perhaps we have a couple of branches in the area, a few organisation members, a few universities which are accredited. And in this model, the effort is focused on is to sort of reducing the silo effect. So, that's taken sort of me meeting my colleagues internally to work out ways which we can encourage kind of collaboration across those different groups, and then to meet with the individual stakeholders to kind of, create that environment in which they're willing to participate in. And we've been really I think we've had quite a good start so far. As I'll explain later, we've been working in Wales to do that, and we're hoping that, we're not too far off being able to kind of kick off our first regional hub meeting in that area. The other model that we've been put in development is called the plant the seed model, and that's really focused on areas where we might be able to use a burst of activity to bring people together under a BCS umbrella. So in this model, we might not have a lot of organisations or employers who have BCS membership. We might not have a particularly active branch, but it's about utilising an initiative such as the Digital Skills Network or something like that, where BCS have invested kind of efforts in a particular region, and we're able to kind of use that as a rallying call to create more activity and to get more support and develop partnerships in the area to then hopefully in future develop that kind of wider BCS community, which potentially could end up in employers or an active branch in that area. So just to end, just to give you an overview of where we're at really. So regional hubs development plan for 2023, we're really focused on Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland as the areas of regions that we're going to be looking to get some development in here. Northern Ireland, there's been a little bit of change around the committee, but there's also been a few questions where I'm going to be going to the committee to talk about in more detail the concept and give them a bit of a helping hand on how they would be able to support and get involved in the regional hub. In Wales, as I say, we've had some really, really positive conversations so far. I think we've had a couple of meetings now with all of the branches in the region. So that's where South Wales, Mid Wales and North Wales. And I've been meeting with the local organisations, and out of that one of the first conversations I had with one of the heads of IT of that organisation, there was the offer of, there was an offer of venue, a meeting space to support our local branches. So with that Wales development plan, we're hoping from about between May and June, we'll be able to kind of just have a first meeting with all those stakeholders around the table. And that'll be a little bit of co-creation from that point. So we'll then try to understand what the needs of various stakeholders are, and how they're able to complement each other, how they're able to support each other, and really go from there. In Scotland, following the kind of plant to seat model, we had our digital skills network back in March. And through that, there was a lot of interest from organisations on how they can work with BCS in the community. And so we've really been just taking a call of interest and getting input from people who would like to kind of support BCS in Scotland. And we've also been having kind of conversations around Scotland, how we can revitalise some of our branches which are kind of dormant at the moment. But we have seen some really great activity. So Edinburgh, for instance, they've been doing a fantastic job, and so there's lots of promise in Scotland for us to kind of develop this model out further. So at this stage, not a lot more to kind of update you on, but I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of see what we've been working on and some of our areas of progress. I think there's a chat. I'm more than happy to kind of take some questions if there's any questions directed towards me within this session. I think Holly shared a little bit around the My Digital Future. Thank you, Holly. And got any more questions at all? I don't think we do. Kerry, is there anything else which has kind of popped up? Has anyone got their hands up at all?
No, you're getting off lightly today, John. Everyone's astounded.
Astounded. Fantastic. Okay, so thank you all for joining this spring convention event. That was a kind of third in our series of 4 events. Our next event will be running in June, and that'll be celebrating some of the successes of our community. And a reminder, this evening is the second part of the spring convention. We've got the workshop and collaboration activity with Chris, so please do come along. I think that's from 6 till 7:30. A massive thank you to Alistair, to Holly, to Chris, and of course to Kerry in the background for helping to run the session. And I hope to see as many of you as possible this evening session. Any questions on today, feel free to contact your coordinator and they'll be able to provide you a bit more information on some of the things we've discussed and any linkages that you might want to make, take things forward. So thank you all very much. Have a lovely afternoon and hopefully see you later today.